Hello and welcome to the W Freelancing podcast, where you'll get actionable advice on how to grow an awesome freelance business or agency from freelancers who are kicking ass and in the trenches actually practicing what they preach. Whether you're just starting out or you're an established freelancer or agency owner, this podcast is your resource for doubling your income, finding better clients, and living a life of financial and personal freedom. I'm your host, Zach Swinehart, and today I'm talking with Delia Monk, who is a copywriter who managed to go from $0 to over six figures, so over $100,000 within her first year freelancing. And get this, she did that on the back of cold outreach. So I'm really excited to pick her brain about her cold outreach strategy and give you some tactics that you can go employ right now to start getting your first clients from cold outreach. So let's dive in. As a reminder, if you enjoy our stuff, be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments, do all those sorts of things. And if you enjoy these interviews and want your questions answered directly by our guests, consider joining the DYF Accelerator community, where you'll be able to ask experts like Delia questions live in the Q&A section or pre-submit questions for me to ask them on the interviews. So if you're interested, you can learn more at dyf.link/community. All right, let's dive in. Welcome to this episode with Delia. Delia is a copywriter, and I don't think you have like a business name. Your business is just deliamonk.com, right?
It is, yeah.
All right. So that's easy to remember. Delia Monk, Delia spelled like Delia and Monk spelled like monk.
Holy monk.
So the reason I wanted to chat with Delia today is that she's had some great success with cold outreach. As I understand, you essentially got to six figures within your first year freelancing on the back of cold outreach alone. Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. And I heard of Delia because she does a lot of work with Joanna, who's coming on the podcast either Thursday or she maybe is rescheduling now, but soon Joanna's coming on the podcast. And it sounds like Delia works with a lot of like course creators, internet marketer types of business people. Yep. Doing website copy, landing pages, that sort of thing. And so today, basically picking the brain about cold outreach. But something I also wanted to talk about a little bit, because I was chatting with Delia yesterday, I want to chat with Delia about kind of, I guess, her work satisfaction, because something that was kind of cool is that a lot of us want to scale from freelance into something else. But what was really cool when chatting with Delia, and if you go to her deliamonk.com website, you'll see her style. It's very like fun. I don't know how to better put it. Like it's very arty, whatever you'd call it style. And she really gets a lot of satisfaction from like doing client work, which I thought was really cool. And I think it sounded like you kind of realized that intensely for the first time yesterday too.
I did. Yeah, we were talking and I was like, Jesus, yeah, I love client work.
So I think I'm sure we'll have some interesting threads to pull there. So for everybody here or people listening later, so basically this is an expert interview in the Accelerator community. I got some questions submitted by people in the community. If you're here live and you're not wanting to hang out the whole time, you can just type your questions into the chat and I'll ask them to Delia at the end or as it makes sense. And I have a bunch logged. And for people who are listening, oh yeah, we hear the background noise. It's not an ocean wave. It is construction, very nicely timed construction. But by the time this is on the real podcast, hopefully we'll use some of our magic noise reduction plugins and nobody listening will understand even what we're talking about right now. That's the hope. So yeah, for everyone here, no pressure to stay. If you want to submit your questions and pop off, no worries. I'll ask her at the end or as they make sense. But if you want to stay, we'll do open Q&A at the end. So Delia, to prime your brain, my core goals for the interview today, basically there's this challenge in the community of essentially, I need more clients and I have no idea how to go about getting them other than like browsing for jobs on Upwork or hoping to get a lucky referral. And I need a systematic way to like predictably get clients. So that's kind of when I'm talking to you about the cold outreach and stuff today, that's what everything today is really driving towards. So if you ever want to go like on a tangent that isn't about cold outreach, but serves that kind of core pain, feel free to do it.
Got it.
And then here is what I'm hoping to leave the interview with, and I want you to tell me if you think it's unreasonable, because I always scope out these podcast interviews with about like 20 hours worth of content, and then, we've got 90 minutes. So what I'd love to leave with is, one, how to even do cold outreach, especially like when you're not a copywriter. If I'm a developer or designer, I don't have a way with words, how to do it. Talk a bit about like the direct to client outreach versus agency partnerships, because I believe you have experience with both, but I'm not sure. So I want to probe into that. And I see you taking notes. If you want me to just link you to my straight up Notion document, I can. But yeah, so that I want to talk about your outreach flow and how to customize it. I mentioned a little bit earlier wanting to do like a scorecard, and I've got a lot more down. But I've got the flow. I don't want to burden you with notes. I don't want to make your brain too cluttered, but I just kind of want to get a sense of like your start to finish process. And from what we were chatting about yesterday, it sounds like metrics with your copy is something that you could do better with. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of curious if with your cold outreach, if you have metrics, or if that's also something you can do better with, because I want to probe for metrics if you have them. And so that is my very reasonable scope.
I love it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So, all right. So before we get into all that, though, I just want a quick recap. So I think you said before getting into copy, you were a journalist, like at a job, or what's your story of how you got here?
So my story is that I was a political journalist on a daily newspaper. So it's like hounding politicians down in the streets, interviewed the ex-Prime Minister of Gordon Brown just before his demise. And then I basically just got sick of the very long hours, the very poor pay. And I gave it all up and went traveling. And I traveled to China from the UK without taking a plane for 6 months. This is relevant because I ended up falling into the travel industry as a result of that. So I then set up a travel business, which, unbeknown at the time, like armed me with all the sort of marketing, sales, business skills. And then when COVID happened, I was heavily pregnant. My daughter was born 2 weeks before lockdown, had my dreamy maternity leave planned, and travel collapsed. But like it collapsed, obviously, horrendously. I was a partner of a travel business. I had to take out loans to pay off people because the money was in other countries. And I just basically started my maternity leave with nothing.
Fun.
Minus. And so I had a few months of like nursing my baby and thinking, oh my God, what happens next? And then I remember one day I was like, literally, I live in Barcelona and I was on the beach and I was looking at the ocean and I was going, what am I going to do? And I just thought, the only thing I can do with my eyes closed is write and investigate, because I used to be a journalist. And so I went home that day. I mocked up a one-page website that was like, I look back at it now, awful. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear at this. I'll keep it PG.
Oh, I swear way too much. So you're
fantastic.
Fine. You can say it's shitty.
It was so shit.
Yeah.
And I did a Facebook post to like friends and family, which was kind of a big deal, right? Because like I'd been a successful journalist, I'd run my own travel business, and I did a post on Facebook that just said, I'm now available for writing work. Ex-journalist, whatever your business needs, I can write it. I hadn't even heard of the word copywriting. I just knew that I could write. And friends and friends of friends started reaching out with a bit of this and a bit of that. And I was doing some proofreading and some PR work and all of that stuff. And I started to think, oh, maybe this could actually be something, while I was waiting for travel to come back. And 6 months later, I'd heard of what copywriting was. I did a course, and very intensive course at what I consider to be the best copywriter school. I went all in, and I basically came out of that course, did a new website, called myself a copywriter, and was like, let's do this. And I couldn't afford to start low, right? I couldn't afford to carry on doing bits and bobs because at this point we had like no money left. So I realized I had to start high. And that's where cold pitching started, because I realized that it was actually the only way that I could go for the big guns, right? Like if I was just sitting there just expecting more gigs off my family and friends, like I wouldn't be earning anywhere near to what I'm earning now. But what cold pitching allowed me to do was literally contact anyone I wanted to contact. So I remember I made a list of people I wanted to work with, and it was super varied. I didn't have a niche at the time. It was everything from my favorite coffee machine to my favorite wine producers to some coaches that I kind of followed and loved and some influencers. And I just started writing to them with kind of all the confidence in the world of someone who didn't have much to lose, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
And what was the course? Was it something, I'm guessing, with Joe or something like that?
It was, yeah, Joe Weeb, Copy School. So I did 10x web, which is super intensive, fantastic, 10x landing pages and 10x emails. And I studied intensively for a month. And she literally is the copy goddess. So I came out of it and I was like, hey, I've got Joe Weeb's badge on. I'm good to go.
Nice. Well, cool. Yeah, I love this story. And I love that it's, I can just picture you on I picture like that cloudy season of Barcelona, like the October disgusting gray, and maybe a piece of trash rolls by as you're sitting gazing longingly into the ocean. That's how I picture this happening.
Zach, were you sitting behind me on the beach?
Maybe
exactly
a single tear.
Yeah.
Okay, so that happened. So that was, I guess this would have been what, like 2020 or something, or when roughly would this have been?
So October 2020 was my beach aha moment. Then I did 6 months of not a copywriter, but just freelancing, right? Just freelancing, whatever I could get. And then I became a copywriter until the following May, June. So summer 2021 is when it began for me.
Cool. So summer of 2021 is when you started cold outreach.
Yes.
Copy journey. Okay. And then, so you're saying by summer 2022, you were already you were essentially, if you continued from summer 2022 to summer 2023, it would be 6 figures, I assume?
Yeah. So it's my first financial year as a copywriter, because in Spain, we do our financial years from January to December. So it was from January to December in 2022 is when I had my first 6-figure year, which was my first 12 months financial year as a copywriter.
Well, that's awesome. Congrats on that. Very
Thank
quick
you.
ascent indeed. Let me think what else I want to ask about your story. I basically just wanted to establish the context, and it sounds like the travel business gave you, as you say, a lot, and then the Joe thing built on that. Let's see. Let me find where I am in the interview. Anything else you think I should know about your story and how you got here before we dig into the actual cold outreach stuff?
One thing I would say is I think often our brand stories don't always come to us immediately. And so I always advise people to really look back at your story and look for some common threads. So, for example, when I first became a copywriter, my story that I used to say was, I used to be a journalist and I was born to write and investigate. I actually argue now that that's part of what makes me a unique copywriter to other copywriters, but it's not my story. My story is as well this journey of life, the fact that I learned how to tell a good story that could fly off the shelves as a journalist. I learned how to investigate and interview even the most challenging of politicians. But then in the travel industry, I learned how to create my own business, build it from naught to, substantial and successful, market my own business, do all my sales. I was getting on phone calls with people and I was selling. And I remember when I started that job, I remember saying, I can't sell. Oh my God, I can't imagine selling. I'm a journalist. Journalists don't sell. Although actually they do. They're selling newspapers every day with headlines. And so I realized actually, looking back on my story, it was actually this wicked combination of that storytelling and investigation plus the sales and the marketing, which is exactly what copywriting is. Copywriting is that blend. And I think that we all have those stories within us. And so I always, when I'm working with clients, we're thinking about brand stories and about pages. It's like, write down all your jobs you've done, what you love, what were you brilliant at, and do a big creative brainstorm about that, and then find some threads. And that's your brand story.
Yeah, I love that. We talk about unfair advantages in the blueprint. Similar deal. This is what's bringing a lot of that to mind. I love it. So with your current business structure, from what you were saying yesterday, it sounds like It's just you and like a VA doing some random stuff.
Yeah.
And that's it, right?
Yeah, I have. So what's worked really well for me is outsourcing little pockets of things that aren't my zone of genius. But as you know, Zach, I've never made a big outsource. Like we were talking yesterday about, could I bring somebody on? I've not done that. But what I do is I have someone who is a phenomenal proofreader, and she proofreads all my stuff because I know that I need a second pair of eyes on work, especially when you're charging the big bucks for it, right? I also have an SEO expert. So I specialize in personality, persuasion, copywriting. I don't specialize in SEO research and SEO, like that sort of stuff. I just start to yawn a little bit. I get somebody who does that for me. She'll do everything like the research, she'll pimp up my copy with keywords if it's necessary. What else? I have an amazing Instagram person. So she makes my Instagram account look pretty. Like you'll see when she started, if you were to scroll through my Instagram, you'd be like, oh, there's pictures of Delia's baby and what she's eating. And then suddenly it all gets a bit more professional.
One day it's just, yeah.
And she's been amazing because like I write all my own copy, but she does all the design. And she has helped me become more creative because it's like she holds me to account and I get all these ideas. And, the more you create, the more you create. So she's been fantastic as well. And then I have my VA that helps me with tech. So I do have 4, but, they're all on just a few hours a month. It's not a lot.
Cool. But that's great. It's good to have the structure. I just wanted to paint that picture for people listening to get an idea of like, and I think for those of you listening, I'm going to be airing within the community the deep dive that I did with Delia yesterday. But I think the direction Delia will probably go is continuing to be soloist with VA support so that she can stay in that stuff that she loves of the writing. What I want to pick your brain a little bit about Delia today as we talk about the outreach stuff is this idea of like what parts of the outreach process might you be able to pay your VA or pay a junior writer to help with to offload things, or what parts of the process might you be able to pay someone for research with and find out what your quote zone of genius is for outreach. I think that's something my head's been on lately that I think is interesting, but alas, that is coming up. So to give me just a really like, let's flow into the cold outreach now.
Yeah.
What's the kind of like high level structure of how you go from, I guess, the coldest that there even is, which is you have to decide who you're going to reach out to, all the way flowing through the cold outreach, the lead, warm, talking to them, closing them? Like what's kind of your like start to finish flow that we can then dig into?
Yeah. So when I first started, I remember just opening a Google Doc and dumping in names and brands of people I wanted to work for. And then I started to group them together a bit by niche and industry. And bearing in mind that when I first started this, right, I was just flying by the seats of my pants. I hadn't done a course on how to cold pitch, right? I was just trialing and erroring. So that was how it first started. And then what I did was I pulled up information about all those people. So I remember I poured myself a big glass of wine and it was like a Wednesday evening. And I opened up all the different websites. So some of them would be Instagram pages and some of them would be websites. And I looked at who they were, what they were talking about, and what their needs might be. Because I think the most important thing with cold pitching is to identify A, who the person is and what they're talking about, and B, what their needs are. And I think the latter is super important when it's cold because, and Zach, you asked me about earlier as well, a bit about if we're doing client outreach, right? So we're not even just trying to outreach to an agency that might need support or collaboration, but actually outreach to a client, then you need to be super specific about what their needs are. There's no point, say, like me emailing you and being like, hey, Zach, maybe you need a copywriter. You probably write copy, and maybe that's like too much for you. Sometimes you need a pair of hands, right? What would probably be more effective is if I go on your website and I can see areas that aren't performing as well. If I can see an about page, which in my opinion isn't hitting the right spots. If I can see that your calls to action aren't consistent. If I can see anything. And then I would basically put that as in my, I'd make a little spreadsheet. So you've got the name of the person that you're contacting, and I'd probably call it weaknesses, right? Copy weaknesses, or pain points, struggles, challenges. What can you visibly see that you think that they will maybe need help with? And then I would also jot down in another column things about their lives, right? Like look at their Instagram account. Bearing in mind I work with a lot of personal brands. So have they got children? Have they got a dog? What does that tell me about their life? Once you've got that, and really, I mean, you're talking about 10 minutes work per client, I would say, to do it effectively. No more than that. Once you've got that, you're ready to pitch. And if you like, I can roll into the pitch, but I'm happy to pause that if you want. And answer any questions.
So I do have one question, and maybe you can't speak to it, and if you can't, that's cool. But the thing that I often struggle with here in the community is that a lot of our audience, like a lot of our members in the community are, say, developers who work with really large companies typically.
Yeah.
And all of my experience, like I've historically served kind of similar clients to you. Smaller businesses, teams of like 3 to 5, somewhere around $1 million a year, good amount of profit, online business, product-based business. With clients like that, I feel like the process is a little bit different for these things. Whereas if I'm imagining like, I don't know, suppose I'm a developer and I'm trying to pitch IBM, or like some gigantic company. Yeah. I don't know that, number one, as an app developer, I don't know, would I be able to spot weaknesses or pain points or challenges? And then like number two, the personalized things, like where I'm struggling with this is that maybe part of the strategy for these things is like, you got to reach out to small businesses. Maybe that is part of the strategy. I just keep going back and forth. Yeah. You have something to say this here.
Yeah. So I think one thing to say is that even if it's a bigger company, you can still ask yourself the question, what are their possible pains, struggles, and challenges? Because if it's a bigger company, maybe it's that they, for example, are needing to hire and they haven't found the right person yet. Also, I think it's really important when you're in a discovery calls with your clients I always ask the first questions, what's going on at the moment? What are you struggling with? Start doing that, noticing that, looking for patterns. Because once you've worked with a niche for a while, you'll know what their struggles and challenges are, no matter how big the company is. So it will be less personal. There might be a little bit more guesswork. But it might be that, you need to bring on a freelancer. Another really good thing to do with those big companies is actually look for what they're hiring for in LinkedIn and then contact them and be like, hey, I saw that you're applying to this job. I'm not in the position at the moment to take on a full-time position, but I absolutely love to help you. Here's how I can help you with this. You know what they need help with because they put out a job spec.
Yeah, I love that.
So I think that's another good way to approach bigger companies. And I think the key question whenever you do a cold pitch is, what is their possible struggle? How can I help them with that? And how can I make their life easier? Because that's all anyone wants, no matter how big the company is.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I wish I had something in Fathom to mark like a fucking mega gem, because I feel like that's like a mega gem. The one about the bigger companies looking at hiring. So clever. And so if you're doing this for a big company, would you essentially, like, would the person, if you're going to go look up someone's personal life, would you be doing that for like the department head decision maker? Like, let's say you were trying to do copy for IBM, who would you be cyber stalking?
Yeah, it's tricky. So I was often looking for the head of marketing. So I have taken that approach as well with co-pitching. And I was often looking for the head of marketing or the head of sales, because that's where copy would normally come under. So my recommendation is to sort of go as high as possible within the company without going so high that they're just not going to give a shit. So who would the boss of your boss be, or who would your boss be, and aim for that person. And there's a plugin that you can use on LinkedIn. I can't remember the name, unfortunately, but if you Google it, you'll probably find it, which unlocks names and email addresses. And so I did use that a little bit as well to help me find the right person. Sometimes they're out of date, but.
I know Kim's here and uses LinkedIn. If anyone here that's live knows the name of the plugin, type it in. I've heard of one that has like a fox or something in the name. This is not helpful. Whatever. We'll find it and we'll like add it to the show notes for the proper one. But yeah, that's really cool. And I was chatting with Brennan about this recently on the topic of like the developer thing. And his point was kind of like, if you went to Steve Jobs as a developer to pitch some code, like he's not even at all connected to the department that's shipping code anymore. So it's finding that balance. It sounds like high enough that they can make decisions, low enough that they have a pulse on the project.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And one thing I would say is like, don't be afraid to make a phone call. So I've rung businesses before and been like, could you let me know who your head of marketing is? Or I've got an application I'd like to put in. Could you let me know the right person? I think sometimes we forget to pick up the phone. But it's so easy. It's probably easier than that LinkedIn plugin. And I think that comes back from my days of journalism, because we would just be having to pick up the phone all the time to get the stories. So you just get over that kind of like, oh, that's a bit orcs.
Yeah. It's easy to forget that you can just do that. You can just like call someone. Yeah. I was just this morning, I was telling you yesterday, you got to read Buy Back Your Time, and telling everyone they got to read that book. I was listening this morning to that audiobook, and he was saying that for hiring, if he needs to hire a role, he'll often call employees of other companies that people on his team say are like really, really good. He'll call them and say, I'm trying to hire someone really good to do blah, blah, blah. Do you know who I should ask? I respect you so much and you're so good at blah, blah, blah. What do you think? And everyone likes that little ego stroke and happy to lend a couple seconds. So yeah, you can just call people on the phone. Weird. Who knew?
It's amazing.
So the other question, I wonder if what we should do is we should go wide and shallow first to paint the whole picture, and then drill down deep. Because what I want to ask is I want to get more detail on your research process, but let's go wide first. So step one, you decide who you're going to reach out to. Got that. Step two, you do research. You cap it at about 10 minutes. You try to determine the pain points. And I guess the pain points are like self-evident because you see opportunities, things that are not doing well, and maybe you see what they're clearly trying to do. And I can give an example from IRL. Someone cold outreached me for our YouTube, and they were like, hey, I looked at your YouTube channel. Clearly you're trying to make this thing work, but like your thumbnails aren't very good. Your SEO is not very good, blah, 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 blah. These are like specific things. So you do that. And then what's the next step once you've made your list of opportunities and things like that?
And one thing I guess I would say as well is like, this is an example from email copywriting that you could do, which I think could be applied to other businesses as well, is like a lot of email copywriters will sign up to get their welcome emails, or sign up to get something. Like sometimes you can do these things to get more information of what you need, and then they would actually send saying, oh, hey, I received these things and I think you could improve it like that. So sometimes as well, it's so like smart. Thinking outside the box. I know that's another copywriting example. But just thinking out the box, how you can tap into those businesses that you want to work with. And
that's so smart. Yeah. And like if you're a developer who specializes in UX, just like straight up buy a 1-month subscription to the app and take screenshots and mark your comments of onboarding. Yeah, that's so freaking smart. Gosh, all these mega gems.
Read the reviews of like that app, and are users saying that there's a consistent problem, it glitches. Like, hey, I saw that you were having some glitch issues. I'd love to come on board and help you with that.
Yeah. Do you ever use Trustpilot or something like that? That could be a good source for these kinds of things.
Yeah, I use it for client projects. So when I'm actually researching client projects, but I haven't actually used it for co-pitching. But yeah, great idea.
It's a collective mastermind idea. I never would have thought of that. I'm giving you credit for that one. Okay, so that's awesome. So you get this info, you find the opportunities. I guess before we go on, any other things you want to add of like where to find these pains, the opportunities, things like that might apply to, say, Joanna, or might apply to a developer, things like that.
So, so as we mentioned earlier, I co-pitched Joanna Galvao. And for me, I did my research with her more on Instagram, because she really shows up on Instagram. And I think Instagram is brilliant because it gives you an insight, not just into professional life, but also personal life. So Joanna and I have both got babies around the same age. We're now they're toddlers. So that was another thing that I could connect with her on. And so, you know, when you look outside, if you're going for more of a personal brand, then don't be afraid to tap into that personal side of it as well.
And suppose you were going to give Joanna tips on how she could do cold outreach to like find design clients. Or I think design's easy because you just go, you find a shitty looking design. But let's say something harder. So UX, we got that example. You sign up for the app. Developer, developer's hard, and I don't expect you to be able to speak to it, but can you think of like this stage, finding these ideas for like the harder industries? Like, I don't know what, okay, we've got someone in the group who's a translator who, well, no, that one's easy because you find poor translations. What is a hard one? We've got Will doing data compliance, but he could look for non-compliant. I don't know. I don't want to harp it. If anybody has anything they want to get specific questions on, put it in the chat, but I'll keep going because we're already a half hour in. We got to get through like 20 more chapters. So,
and I guess,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Zach. I was just going to say, I guess no matter how hard your industry is, it might be hard for me to specifically say how to do it because I don't know your industry, right? But just remember that you are the genius of your industry, and the only thing you're looking to do is find inroads to get to know these people, to give you snippets of their needs, their pain points, and their struggles. And so just brainstorm some ideas like we have just now, LinkedIn, Instagram, and what are those platforms and places where your people are hanging out, and hang out there and stalk them in any way that you can.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, like, I guess developers, for example, they're often on Twitter, not Instagram, and depending on the thing, they might be in a different place. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So we've got this research preliminary phase taken care of. So what's the next kind of broad step? Is it the cold pitch?
Yeah. So when it comes to cold pitching, well, I have a number of philosophies. I guess before you even pitch, there's a bit of a mindset piece, right? Where a few things. One, I time myself cold pitching because I don't want it to start to feel like some big, enormous job that can take ages. So how much time are you happy to put into this? How many people do you want to contact? Try and do it in that time. That also stops you procrastinating. It stops you overthinking what you're writing, because, and this kind of gets into point number 2, co-pitching is a numbers game, right? So you will not get a reply to loads of co-pitches, and that is okay. And like, you need to tell yourself that, not take it personally, embrace it. And then on to point number 3, have fun with that, because like, you are putting yourself out there, right? It can feel a bit icky, a bit kind of vulnerable, all those things. For me, my go-to whenever I start to feel a bit like that is, how can I have fun with this? How can I enjoy this, right? Because I just have a mentality of, if I'm going to be doing this for the next hour, let's make it fun. The other reason why I think that is so important to have fun with that, and I'll explain a bit more about what I mean by that, but it's because if you have fun with something, you naturally show up as you, right? You naturally put your personality into the cold pitch. And if you're a developer and your personality is quite serious and that is you, and you enjoy getting into that headspace, then do it. If your personality is a designer and you're super creative and you're an illustrator and your personality is as visual as your images, then don't be afraid to like approach the cold pitch like that. This isn't like a, dear sirs, I would like very much to help you with something. This is like, imagine reaching out to a friend that you know has got a problem, but you know that there's quite a few other people reaching out to them too. And so you want to be you want to help them, you want to be the one that goes for it. You need to sell yourself, of course, but do it in a way that's natural to you. Because if you do that, then you will end up working with people that are a good fit. Because what I've found is that there's a reason why everyone I've cold pitched that I've worked with has been a dream client. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, they've been the best clients in the world. And it's because I've been naturally attracted to them. Hence, I wanted to cold pitch them. But B, because I sent cold pitches that have a bit of personality in it and are a mirror of me. And therefore, when someone gets that, they'll think yes or no. Even before, you know, like even before you do anything else.
Yeah, I had good success with having my homepage. Like, in hindsight, I could have improved it, but my old homepage for my consultancy said like, I build kick-ass websites or something like that, so that nobody, if they're going to have a problem with my irreverence or cursing, they wouldn't even bother to get in touch.
Exactly.
And same deal. Like, the people who did, I could just be more authentically myself. That was nice.
Yeah.
So I have things I want to dig into here. Number 1, what do you time box your outreach at?
Yeah, so I time it for 30 minutes max, but I would try for 20 minutes.
For each one?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's a good investment.
Yeah, but I think this is where I've had a high success rate.
You know, I'm not saying it's wrong. I was just like, oh my gosh, I thought she was gonna say like 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, that's cool. 20 minutes max, aim for 30 max, aim for 20.
I think, but I'm including the research time.
Oh, okay.
I'm including the sort of like, yeah, so sitting down, I've got a person, do a bit of research on them, write it. I would try and get the whole thing wrapped up in 20 to 30 minutes max.
Okay. And you said 10 minutes for research.
Yeah. So then 10 to 20 minutes for writing.
And then the like finding or deciding, I'd like to dig more into that. Like, because I don't, maybe it should be obvious or whatever, but if I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that's nice to say I should make a list of who I want to work with, but like, I don't know who I want to work. I know the vague industry, but how do I know who my dream clients are?
Yeah. So when I first started, like I said earlier, it was like a random shopping list of bizarre people. The more I did it, the more I realized that I wanted to work in a certain way, and actually co-pitching massively helped my niche. I wouldn't have even got my niche if I hadn't have started wide. So I would say full permission to cast the net wide if that's the only thing you can do at the beginning and you just need to get started. But then be aware of, like, as you're pitching, who are you getting that genuine excitement that you really want to work with? Who are the ones that you want to hear back from more than others? And then once you've started to tap into that niche a bit, so for instance, for me, it was Joanna. So I co-pitched Joanna. She said yes. I realized what a dream client she was. I then started looking at who are her friends, who are other people more like her, because then you can almost, it becomes quite easy to then niche. And then your searching people process happens, honestly, for me, without it even being a scheduled thing, whereby I'll be listening to a podcast with someone and I'll think, I want to co-pitch them. And I just write it down in a note in my phone. I just have a running list of people. And so I'd be like, oh yeah, I want to co-pitch them. Or I'd be on Instagram and I'd be looking at friends of a client or people that have worked, you know, if, for instance, if you pitch an agency, who are their clients? Like, you often can get that one big baby and then look at what's coming off them, almost like a wheel, right? With like all the spokes coming off them. And then so from one good potential lead, you can probably find 20 to 50 more in that space. Yeah,
that's so cool. And I mean, gosh, that's how I found you, right? Like I my own struggle here is like, okay, so I know I want to find some freelancers who are doing cool shit, but like, how do I find them besides the ones I already know? And then I was listening to Joanna's little recording on her YouTube thing that she sent me to prep for her interview. And then she mentioned you and I was like, oh, so Delia cold outreach to Joanna. Bet I could talk to Delia about cold outreach. And that's how I found you. So yeah, it's like once you find the little threads to pull, it becomes easier and easier and easier. So I love this process of casting a wide net. So yeah, that's awesome.
I think it can feel so much harder to start. And that's why I'm such a believer in don't overthink it and just start, because once you start, it becomes easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, we've had so many discussions in the community lately about how to like choose a niche. And it's this challenging thing because I just kind of found myself in a niche due to gradual course corrections. And it seems like that's what most people do. And the thing that I'm kind of starting to learn is that maybe that's how it always is. It's not choosing a niche, it's finding a niche. And that comes at the cost of like casting your wide net, trying things, seeing what works. And I love your take of like asking yourself, who are you getting excitement from? Who do you want to hear back from? And letting that guide you. And what are you getting good responses from? Tweak from there. I want to dig into you soon, or dig into soon with you. What a terribly constructed sentence. Soon, I would like to dig into the idea of metrics with you to say like, what does a good response rate look like? Like, how do I know this is something that's working, this isn't, but let's get to that in a minute. So the ideas thing, I love that. I think we've got a good framework for getting the initial ideas, which is just write down a big ass brain dump, start reaching out. Anything else you want to add on this, like getting the first ideas one?
Yeah, so one other thing that just came to me then is like, have they got the budget to work with you? Because I didn't really fall into this trap myself, but I've seen some friends of mine who started to just kind of pitch people they like the look of, but were clearly, you know, really lovely Instagram accounts and really cool stuff going on, really cool business, but probably not in a position to pay, you know, high level for a service to a service provider. So be mindful of that as well. And I think sometimes we can judge that by how much of their products that they're selling, do they have a team, what's their following, what's their audience size like. All those little things can help give good nuggets about whether or not they'll be at the position to actually pay a service provider.
Yeah. And to tie back to your, I think, genius idea earlier about looking at job postings and stuff, is like, if you see that they're hiring for a position that is doing basically what you do, and you think you could more efficiently do the thing they're hiring for, like, but even that aside, the fact that they're hiring for something you can help with means they have a budget for it. So that's a cool one. And yeah, I like the team size thing. Brendan mentions it, I think, in Blueprint, talking about how, like, if they have a full-time like administrative assistant, or they have any other full-time roles on team, these are things that cost money to fill. And so it's like a good way to get a sense for where they're at and stuff. So that's cool. Anything else you want to add on this ideas front?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
I guess one thing, sorry. I'm like, because there's so much to unpack, but one thing I would say, just like going back on niching, is that I was the same as you, Zach. I remember thinking, I don't know what to niche in, and everyone was like, if you niche, you're going to earn more money. So I was like, okay, I'm going to niche, but I don't know what to niche in. And I think I did niche within 3 months of starting to co-pitch. And it was my co-pitching that helped me niche. Because also, like, as I'm sure something you teach and talk about with niching, one of the big benefits is that you just get the audience better, right? You know what their pains and struggles are. The job becomes easier. You're doing the same thing over and over again. If you get faster, that also means you're earning more. So suddenly I was naturally niching, right? Because I was just like, well, I know how to do that and I know what they need. So I'm just going to keep going down that line. So
yeah, that's so cool.
Hidden benefit of co-pitching.
Yeah. So something's been happening in my mind a lot lately is like, I want to start creating courses where we teach a topic and then we teach it from different angles. Because like we have the Trojan horse interviews, for example, which is one of the strategies we teach in Blueprint to get into the shoes of your audience and find their pains and stuff. But then I was talking to Kim the other day and I learned her LinkedIn strategy does the same thing. It results in the same like pain knowledge, which informs niching. Your cold outreach strategy. So what I got to do is teach like a niching course and then get Kim, get Brennan, get all these different experts put in their path to finding a niche. And so we have this well-rounded thing. So I'm signing you up in advance for that if I could.
Amazing.
Okay, so we've got ideas. We've got a little bit of research. We've got some of the mindset stuff, and I've got a lot more stuff written down. But guys, in the audience, if there's anything that of these broad strokes that you're like, oh my gosh, if I were to try to go do this myself, I would totally get stuck on XYZ. Feel free to drop that in the chat and we'll circle back. But I've got some digging deeper questions on all these coming up. So with your time, let's just break it down real quick. So you say you want to do 30 minutes max. So that means like deciding, I guess probably the way it would work is your initial idea dump for deciding probably like 1 hour timer. And then that should hopefully get you like, I would think at least 20 ideas. And then probably moving forward, the deciding part isn't even going to take time because the ideas will just be coming to you. That's my guess.
Yeah.
So it's essentially of the 30 minutes, 10 minutes is research. And then 10 to 20 minutes is the first message. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do follow a template, which I'm happy to kind of walk you through as well.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll dig into that in a few. So you do that, you send the email, and then we'll get into the details of the follow-up, but presumably you follow up. We'll get into that specifically. And then presumably from there, so I told you in advance, one of the things I wanted to chat with you about is like how much or how little scaffolding someone should have. Like how much should they have on their website for these potential leads to see if they click their little signature? But is essentially the flow, once they respond and you get a favorable response, you try to book them on like a discovery call, or what's the flow from there?
Yeah, so I always say that every cold outreach email needs to just have one call to action. Now that call to action, there is no right or wrong answer. There's pros and cons to all of them. And the best thing I could say would be to test. So, send a batch 20 out with one call to action, send another batch out with another call to action. I personally have had a lot of success with asking people to jump on a discovery call. So that's been like a 20-minute, not discovery call, but like a 20-minute coffee. But that's quite a high ask, right? So actually, it's probably quite surprising that so many people said yes. But that was my call to action, because I knew that if I could just meet them and have 20 minutes with them, that would be enough to take me to the next level. Two other options that I think are really worth considering. One is to just try to get a response. Like, how can you get them to reply? Is it that you're asking a question that warrants a reply? Is it that you're dropping a bit of an open hook or a teaser at the end and promising to give them something else on a second email if they can confirm they'd like it? So, for example, if you manage to get that reply, maybe your next one is a 3-minute or 1-minute video where you're personally making a video and you're talking them through something. Maybe you jump on Loom and you're pointing something at their website you'd love to do, and you do it quick. Oh, hey, this is me, by the way. And it's super personal. You could even put that in your first outreach email, right? And so, yeah, so I basically say either you want to get them to jump on a call with you, you just want to get them to reply, and then think about what you're going to do with that reply, whether it is following up with a little video and saying, hey, if you drop me a reply, I'll send you a 2-minute video telling you exactly what I mean about this. Right? So that then they reply, you send them the video. They'd probably be my two main go-tos.
Okay. You mentioned a third one. Did you cut it, or was it actually just two? I'm just trying to remind you if there was a third one.
I think there might be a third one. It might come back to me.
Okay. Well, we'll circle back for this anyway. For the number 2 approach, the YouTube person that I mentioned, their flow was that they replied, and the first email was just like, and it wasn't even a customized template there. It was just like, I noticed you're trying to make your YouTube good, blah, 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 blah. But I found some opportunities to improve it. Can I send you a quick video? And I said, sure, I'm happy to see a quick video. And then they made it. And the nice thing about that is that they deferred that customized video time until they got some interest, which I thought was quite clever.
Yeah, I like that strategy.
The one for people taking a similar strategy, the feedback that I gave this dude was that what I noticed is that once I received that YouTube video, it felt like a homework assignment for me. And I kind of was putting off responding because I knew it would take like 10 minutes. And so I mentioned that maybe if in their cold email, they said what that video was going to teach me and what the impact on my business was going to be, to kind of like sell me on even the value of watching that video, that might have increased that rate.
Yeah, I think you definitely need a hook, right? You need a reason to open it. Like in this video, I've just given you the 3 key things that I changed that would give you X, Y, and Z, like my results and outcomes. And then you watch it. I remembered what the third one was.
Okay.
Sorry, is it good to go back?
Yeah, go for it.
The third one might be to get them on your email list. If you feel, and it is a bit of a big if, it wouldn't work for a lot of service providers, but if you feel that your emails that they will then get will convert them into believing that they need you.
Yeah, because I guess that on the scaffolding front, like that would be a lot of scaffolding. Because if somebody hasn't chosen their niche yet and they haven't had a lot of those conversations about pains, they wouldn't have the basis yet to even create a good funnel. No. But it's good to know for later.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do that. So let's say you do option 2, just because I think option 2 is going to flow into option 1. So if you do option 2, you say, hey, can I send you a Loom video? They say, sure. And then you send it. Obviously, if you're going to go for the 1 CTA rule, your Loom video email, the only CTA would be watch the Loom video. Or would it be like watch Loom video and then get back to me if you want to talk?
Yeah, it would be watch the Loom video, but then obviously you need something to take it on to the next step, right? Because otherwise they watch it and they don't come back to you. So that's when I think at that point you'd be asking them to get on a discovery call, or asking them if they might want you to help with this, and here's what we could do next. But I would probably at that point definitely go for the discovery call.
So you've done the Loom video strategy successfully before, or which one have you done the most?
I've mostly done just direct asking to go on to a discovery call.
Okay.
And I've had quite a lot of success with that, but I would absolutely do the Loom video. And what's worked really well for me in Loom videos is actually often more in the discovery process. If I've got a potential client, then I'll do Loom videos.
Okay. And the thing I want to audit, because you are a professional copywriter, there are things that you'll take for granted that maybe even I will, in terms of how to position call to actions or position some of this stuff. So I want soon to create like a little scorecard with you later on in this call or something. But if I'm doing my initial email, presumably what I need to do is create enough curiosity and enough tie back into how these things I want to tell them will impact their business that they are inclined to reply. Is that right? Or like, what's the KPI for like getting them to take the next step?
I think if you, and I guess maybe when we go through the sort of template of what I do, that might answer that question a bit.
Okay.
But what you really want to do is connect with them initially so that they feel that you get them. I think that's why that opening line is so important. And then your call to action comes towards the end. And then I always recommend a PS and you repeat your call to action, because some people will just scan the email and they just get down to the bottom. And especially if you have written an email that's a bit longer, then you've got that CTA in at least a couple of times. Does that answer the question?
It does. Yeah, I think it'll be really helpful once we see the template. And if you're cool with it, I can just like have you send me one and we can genericize it and just put it in the show notes or something.
Yeah. And in fact, when you're speaking to Joanna, she actually has the template in an easy downloadable form. So
okay, is that the one? It was probably the one that she had as her CTA in the thing I listened to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, I can
that's
just
the best way for people to
steal her lead magnet.
Yeah,
give her credit for it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you do that, you do your discovery call, and you presumably the hook of the call is like talking about the opportunities you noticed, or what's the hook for the call?
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to so basically I've got the email here that I sent to Joanna. I've just got it here. And I kind of break it into 4 sections. So if it'd be helpful, I can break into those 4 sections and then give you an example of what I wrote. Would that be a helpful way to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, amazing. Let me just pull it up on my screen here. So I'm going to use for this purpose the analogy of doing a bit of a Tinder pitch, right? Because when I was cold pitching, I started to feel a bit like it was online dating, because you'd be sort of sending these emails out and you're like, hey, do you want to work with me? It feels a bit like sending that first post in, first message on Tinder or something. And so using that analogy, what I like to say is that first up, you've got to find your crush, which we've talked about. So who's your crush? Who's the person that you want to contact? Then you need to look at their profile, just like you would look at their profile on Tinder or Bumble, and you're looking for something in it that grabs you, or if it's a developer, bigger website project. Then the first thing you're going to do in your email, your opening line, is a little bit of light flirting. So what does that mean? It's kind of like if you imagine on a date or on that first message on Tinder, that person's got 10 other emails coming in. What can you say that is going to stand out from the rest and make somebody feel connected to you, right? Because that's what we do when we're flirting. So for example, with Joanna, how I kind of flirted with her was, hi Joanna, I love all the training and tips you've been giving on Instagram, packaged with so much value. I've been fangirling all over your current book solid sales page, because she'd written a sales page, which I thought was brilliant. The copy was so good that I wasn't going to pitch her for that, right? So there's that intro that's kind of like, I see what you're doing and I really, really like it. So I always recommend to start with a compliment. This is especially important if you are going to go into their potential weaknesses that you want to help them with. We want to do a bit of a shit sandwich, right? So, and then I say, but I'm emailing you today to see if I can help you. So it's like, then we're segueing into how I can help her. And so then I look at her actual business. So what do I know now about her business? So this shows that I've paid attention to her profile, her business. And so I was pitching her because she runs Gift Design Agency. And my thinking was, they work with all my dream clients. So if I could be her go-to copywriter, hopefully I'd get dream clients on tap. Which happened. So I then go into saying, like, look, I love what you've created at Gift Design Studios. I was recently writing a website for a web designer, and I analyze your website and feedback as part of my research process. Let's just say it was love at first click, which was totally true. Like, that's how she came onto my radar, because I was like, I love this. Then I go on a little bit more. Like we've said, you can get the full email by downloading Joanna's kind of a template that she's got. So I go on a little bit more talking about that. And then I say, it looks like you've got a successful agency that you cover all bases. But I was curious, so now this is when we get into how you can help. I was curious as to whether you collaborate with copywriters or if you might need some extra writing hands on deck at times. Now, this is the point where you make your memorable introduction, right? So this is the point now where you've connected with them, you've done a little bit of flirting, a bit of complimenting, you've suggested you could help them, you've painted the picture that you know what they're doing. Now we get into the bit about you. And even when you're talking about you, just remember always be thinking which bits are relevant about you that can help this person on the other side. So then I talk about myself and I say I'm a qualified conversion copywriter. Writing personality copy with detailed attention to tone of voice is my bag. I would love to offer you and your clients the same attentive process that I deliver to my private clients. So I'm then highlighting that I've got a good process. But then I was thinking when I wrote this email, I was thinking, like genuinely thinking what her needs would be, right? I don't know if Joanna and her agency want to sort of subcontract to me or if they want me to have contracts with clients. So then I'm thinking about that and I'm wondering if that might be an obstacle to her working with me because maybe, I don't know the answer to that. And that's another thing to ask yourself is what general obstacles might be coming up in the reader's head and how can you help to overcome them before they've had a chance to think them? So then I say, I'm poised and professional enough to work directly with your clients, but also a team player who's happy to hang behind the scenes, making you look brilliant. And then I actually link my freebie, which is to help people write a website. So I've got like a 3-step plan on how you can help a website. So I link that because that's actually also my process. It's my plan. It's everything. So I'm sort of like, if you're curious to know my process, you could download this. That also maybe gets on my email list.
I was curious if I wanted to go download this, where do I go to download it?
Yeah. So it's www.deliamonk.com/plan. And it's my 3-step plan to writing a website.
deliamonk.com/plan.
Yes.
Cool. Continue. So you link to this. And what I love about that too is like, I feel one of the things that establishes like credibility and professionalism is having a process. And that's where I wanted to talk to you about this scaffolding and stuff. Like things like if someone responds to me with a Calendly link, it just shows like they've got their shit together. Or if they respond with a lead magnet, like most people don't have lead magnets. And so when she sees these things and she sees that you have a process, she's like, okay, this is someone who, if I turned a client over to her, she wouldn't just disappear, I hope, or at least points to that. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow. I just want to make sure you dropped the link so I knew where I could download your website checklist if I wanted to see it. So keep going. So you mentioned that. What came up next in the template? Perfect.
So then I have a section where I'm like, basically like, you've got to like, don't be a catfish, right? That's like when you do dating and you say you're someone, but you're not really. Mm-hmm. So to carry on with the dating analogy, how can you prove that you really are this person, right? Because anyone, especially with ChatGPT now, could write a very nice email. But how can we actually prove we are this person? And how can we tie that proof into what they need? So I know that Joanna's website agency, and one of my USPs as a copywriter is that I wireframe all my copy in Figma, which most copywriters don't. But I'm a very visual copywriter. I do all the strategy and sitemap and everything in Figma. So of course I need to tell her that, but instead of just banging on about myself, it's time to bring in a testimonial, right? It's so important to have somebody else backing up what you're saying. So then I say, I've worked with many web developers and designers who have said some very lovely things about me. Spoiler alert, they love my wireframes. Because I know that Joanna will like that, right? She's an agency. For example, Kaylee Hall, design consultant and CEO of Hall Creative, said, Delia makes my job so much easier. Her wireframes have completely spoiled me from a design perspective, and my clients have been over the moon with her tone of voice work. Seriously good stuff. She's a real expert in conversion copy. She speaks with conviction, has sound rationale with every decision, and is a real strategist. So, Joanna can look up Kaylee on any platform and see that she's a real person. And so I think it's important to have a reputable testimonial in there from ideally the same industry, or at least hitting the points that will be relevant to the person receiving this email. And then we get to the final bit, which, to continue with my dating analogy, is asking for the date, which is your C to A. So then I just say, so what do you think, Joanna? Need a hand on any projects you've got coming up? Cheers, Delia. P.S. Fancy a 20-minute virtual coffee with zero pressure to have a chat about how I might be able to help you. You can book a slot on my calendar here. It's a bold move, but I'm feeling bold. And I guess that's an example again of me putting my personality in, right? And then I do a PPS. Want to vet me first? Wise. You can get an insight to my writing style and process by reading my secret 3-step plan to writing websites here. And then I link my freebie again. So I know I said earlier that I do recommend just having one call to action. I have linked my freebie a couple of times into that email. But I did see that as my secondary call to action. And it feels a bit like if she didn't go for that bold move, then maybe at least she'd get my emails. And I feel pretty confident about my email sequence to hope that that would help keep me in contact with them.
Yeah, it gives her the opportunity, like if she's on the fence, to kind of evaluate you a little bit further and stuff. I think that makes sense. So I'm trying to think how, like I'm putting myself in the shoes, like let's say I'm a developer, what this might look like. And I want to also think about time, because if we go simulate this with a bunch of different industries, it might be at the expense of getting to explore some of this other stuff. So maybe what we do is if you have anything else to add to this template piece, you can add that. We'll cover the other stuff. And if we have time, we can loop back and do some other examples, or people, for those of you still here live, if you want to type into the chat, like if you're having trouble thinking about how you might apply this template for yourself, maybe type into the chat where you think you'd run into challenges going through this flow. And again, we'll get an actual proper template for the show notes and stuff. So before we move on from this, Delia, is there anything else you want to add with this template flow you take?
I would just say that even though that sounded like quite a lot that I read out, white space is important. So be making sure your email has got lots of white space in, that your sentences are quite short and punchy, and there's lots of paragraph breaks between the sentences. Don't be afraid to maybe like italicize, I can never say that word, italicize the testimonial. And so that it doesn't just look like a block of words.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is that template that I just read out, you can follow that same format and actually make it more templated and just be changing the introduction and so put in something that you can see online, something about their business, and like a lot of that middle bit that's talking about me and how I can help you doesn't need to change as long as I'm still pitching the same kind of person. So for example, it would be a logical thing to do is to say, okay, today I'm going to pitch agencies. Tomorrow I'm going to pitch, then you have an agency template, because they will all care about wireframing, whereas somebody else wouldn't care about wireframing. So even if you are spreading your net wide with who you're talking to, or pitching, I should say, try to group them and then create templates for that, because actually now to change that template for another agency is really quite easy.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Tell Joanna I said that.
But you'd still have that secret sauce each time, which is, I like your intro, that, hey, Joanna, I love all the training and tips you've been giving, and I've been fangirling all over XYZ specific sales page. Like, it's that kind of thing that shows that you've actually taken a fucking second to learn about the business, And like, I think your point earlier about signing up for the lead magnet and just reading the emails, like these are things that would be so easy that no one does, like no one actually just takes a second to get the real information and calling it out. And that by simply saying something that very obviously shows that you did take that second, you buy yourself so many brownie points, I feel like.
100%. And I think one of the reasons why I've had a really high success rate with this is because nobody bothers doing this. Like, how many spammy LinkedIn
Yeah.
messages have we all received that's like, hi, greetings, da 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 da. Like, and it's like, oh, like just spammy. No, get out of my face. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't work. And so, yes, this way of doing it does take a bit more time. But your conversion rate's going to be higher.
And so that's a good segue into metrics. Like for a template to an agency like you did with Joanna, or a
Yeah.
direct outreach version, I don't know how much your metrics vary, but on average, let's say you're going, well, you say you do mostly trying to book a call, right? So what's your typical response rate metric? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. So I've got an example. I just took a month to give you an example of a month. So in September 2022, yeah, last September, I think that's right. Yeah. September 2021. Sorry, my first year when I was co-pitching, I sent a similar email to that, templated to 10 people. I didn't do more than that. I just did 10. It's quite a low number, really, for co-pitching. Of that, I got 4 responses. So that's a 40% response rate. Of that, I got onto 2 calls. And of that, I got 1 client who was Joanna, which resulted in, like, over the time of years that we've been working together for the last 2 years, I need to tot it up, but well over $100,000 of work from sending 10 emails.
And it was to 10 agencies, right?
Yes, it was
Okay.
10 agencies, but there were some of them were freelancers that were sort of, high level freelancers. And so I mentioned I got on 2 calls. One was Joanna that resulted in, I'd say at this point, at least $150,000 of work in 2 years. The other one, and countless other opportunities, and a friendship,
Yeah.
like the stuff that dreams made of. And the other person that didn't become a customer has become a really valued partner. So we regularly have catch-ups, we talk about projects. I'm on her list of potential copywriters to work with. I haven't had a gig out of it yet, but she gave me my VA and it's helped build my network and my community. And she's somebody else that recognizes me as a leading copywriter and she's a respected person in the design industry. So sometimes with co-pitching as well, you might not always get that 150K client, right? But you can get some other really cool stuff out of it too.
And we talk a lot about the value of just getting into like real conversations, and it sounds like you certainly get that. What about with direct outreach to potential clients? Like, I can't remember if we talked yesterday about how you're getting your clients now, if you're mostly coasting on referrals, if you're still doing cold outreach these days.
So I'm not doing a lot of cold outreach these days, but it's definitely the first thing I would do if I was looking to scale or grow. So, like that, we spoke yesterday about the fact that I'm often fully booked for a couple of months. And then I might have a moment where I suddenly look at my calendar and go, oh, I've not got a lot on.
Yeah.
And I absolutely would do cold outreach in them. But just as it happens, because I am just me, my capacity is limited. I haven't had to regularly cold pitch, but I would. What I do find is really effective now, and actually definitely talk to Joanna about this because she is so good. She is the master of making one lead become more and more leads and tapping into your network. But I definitely have found that just the more clients you have, the longer you do this, the more that they will talk about you to other people. Last month, I started to get a little bit quiet and I created a new service. So I created a copy intensive service where somebody could book me for a day or a week or a month. And then what I did was I created a 15% discount. So I created 2 mirror sales pages, one which is on my website, which you can see. It's called the Hot Copy Intensive. And then there's a mirror website, which is a secret website, which I can't tell you about, which is exactly the same, but it's with a special 15% discount for my existing clients to encourage that repeat. work. So then what I did was I emailed, my VA helped me pull up a list of all my clients that I've loved working with for the last 2 years. I sent them individual emails with my new service. I told them I've created a special 15% discount just for them because I'd loved working with them and I already knew their business so well. And that's other things like that I would do now. Keep tapping into my existing network of amazing clients I built up.
And have you had, I see a question from Sam, I'll ask in one sec. So have you had experience with doing cold outreach directly to the end client in a batch like this? I'm curious what the percentage responses and stuff look like direct to end client.
Yeah, so I did do some direct response to end clients. In benefit of hindsight, they were not my industry or niche, or really. But even with them, I had success. So there was one that, this was a different month, so I haven't got all the stats in front of me, but I remember this wonderful winemaker in California coming back to me and they said, oh, interesting, because we're just rebranding, but get in touch again in a few months and maybe we'll talk about it. And I kept in touch with them. Didn't work out in the end, but like it could have done, right? Because once you've got that conversation going, there's so many other factors at play. But that was a warm response. Another example I had was I did contact I don't know if you know Gigi at 16 Creative. She helps a lot of entrepreneurs as well. She's a designer, website designer and brand designer. And I saw that she was looking for a copywriter and I contacted her directly. So I think I was aware that she needed somebody and then I pitched her. So a bit similar like looking for that job application, right? Like she was on my radar. I could see she needed somebody. I pitched her and we ended up working together as well.
And that was another kind of like agency partnership, or that was like you doing direct work for her?
That was me doing direct work for her. Yeah.
So this is really helpful. And let me ask these questions that came in. I'll ask Brad's first. So with regards to composing that initial message, if you don't have a lot of credibility indicators yet, like you don't have a lot of testimonials or you don't have a website, I mean, frankly, Brad, I think that one might be maybe a deal breaker depending on the work you're doing. But nonetheless, like here's my example that I'm speaking from. Someone recently reached out to DYF Cold Outreach, said like, hey, I found security bugs with your site. Do you do bug bounties, blah, blah, blah. And like they sent some specific bugs that they found that seemed credible, but like this person doesn't have a website. And in order to remediate these bugs, I'd have to like give them logins. And that sounds very scary to me. So what do you think about establishing credibility, Delia? If you're new, you don't have a website, you don't have testimonials, that sort of thing.
Okay, so you absolutely can do this and you can do the prep work you need to do for it basically in a day. If you haven't got a website, I really recommend you having at least like building a one-page website. Like, do you remember earlier when I said that I went home one day and wrote a website? So you can have something, or maybe you want to send them to your LinkedIn. You know, have you got a fantastic LinkedIn? Does that do the job for you? You know, a lot of employees, especially if you're looking for these bigger companies, wouldn't even look at a website. They would look at your LinkedIn. So that's another good one. But you absolutely do need somewhere that they can go and just check you out. And then with regard to your testimonial, all you need is one project to get a testimonial. And if you haven't yet had a first paying customer and you haven't been able to get that testimonial, how can you help out your friends and family, do genuine work for them, or approach somebody and offer them a deal that they can't refuse, do a skills exchange, do something and get that amazing testimonial? And Kaylee, who was my testimonial in that, was my first customer. So, you know, I didn't have at this point a huge bank of phenomenal testimonials to pull from that, you know, I do now, but I didn't then. And all you need is one good one. And so, you know, be thinking when you're at the point of asking for that testimonial. And I feel like this is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it is.
About what you want them to say and asking the right questions to get them to say that. And that's what you need.
And Brad, for that one, you can check out the case studies workshop that I'm working on. What do you think, Delia? And this is a whole conversation too. I want to get as much out of these 15 minutes we got remaining as I can. But like, I've been thinking of the idea of doing pro bono or performance-based early projects to get real-world experience and get a good testimonial. What do you think of that approach? Like, how did you get Kaylee as the first customer?
Oh yeah. So actually, I was going to mention that. We did a skills exchange.
Okay.
So she designed my website and I wrote her copy.
Oh, nice.
And yeah. And the other first project that I did actually just before that was for my travel business. So when I was going through my copy course, I wrote a new website for my travel business. And that went live. And then I got the CEO of the company to give me a testimonial.
Oh, nice. So, okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. And so to Sam's question, and I'm curious about this too. So if we're looking at the pacing here, so let's say you send out your cold outreach email today. What's your typical, so number one, when do you follow up? That's my first question.
Yeah. So I would follow up about 5 days later, five working days later. And I would do a really short follow-up because especially if your email has been a little bit meatier, which mine are, just a really short, sweet follow-up, which would be like, I haven't got it right in front of me what I would say, but just something really short, like, hey, just want to check if you'd see the email below and if I can help you at all.
Cool. And then do you do only one follow-up or do you do more? I
actually do. I just do one because honestly, it really annoys me when people keep following up.
Yeah.
And I haven't replied.
I feel like a lot of people stop at like 3 and that's by the time I get the third, I'm like, no, mate. I know Brendan's a fan of just one follow-up as well. Okay, so let's say so that answers that one. So now to Sam's question, not even accounting for follow-ups. I don't know if you've noticed, like, do your best clients or relationships come with requiring a follow-up or not? We don't have to get into all that. But what I am curious of, typically, what's the window like between the first cold outreach message and the close on average?
It's a good question. Depends on their needs and how urgent their needs are. Because obviously you don't know 100% that they're even ready to do the thing you're asking for. Yeah. When I have had most success, it's when, and this maybe comes down to a little bit of luck, unless you know for sure, it's when they've got a pressing need. Yeah. So for instance, Joanna wrote back the most incredible email. I was like, whoa, which basically said, like, I've never received such a lovely cold pitch email. And she even said, do you mind if I share this with my mastermind on how to cold pitch? And then she said, as it happens, I do need a copywriter because most of the great copywriters we know are fully booked. And I've also got some needs of my own. And then she flew to Barcelona to meet me. So that happened very fast. We did have a call before that. And she was
only flying from Portugal.
She was only flying from Portugal. But we had and I remember, when we had our first discovery call, it was such a big deal to me, right? Because I really wanted to work with her, get the discovery call. And then on the discovery call, it went into a slightly different, it was a totally different angle to what I thought it was going to be, right? And our time was ticking and I realized I hadn't got what I needed. And so then I had to make which felt bold move at the moment to say, okay, our time's coming to the end, but I've realized actually we've opened something different here that I'd love to help you with, but haven't yet got what I need. Can we set up another call? Would you mind to tap into that more? I remember that really vividly, but so, I guess I say that because when you do cold outreach, it can go in so many different directions. It depends on their needs, how pressing they are, all those different things. Hard to say.
And on that note, so let's say you get a response like maybe kind of akin to the winery one, because I do think you're right. Like when I think about this YouTube cold outreach, it worked on me because YouTube is like a really high priority for me in my business right now. And I know that I don't know very much about how to do it right. And so it's just the right time. Let's say you get a response that's like, hey, this sounds cool, but I don't really need copy right now, but maybe later in the year. Or maybe they don't even give you that much. Maybe they say, I don't really need copy right now. Hard stop. What do you do next? Do you follow up in a few months?
Yeah, I would follow up in a few months. But before that, I would keep in touch with them. So I would sign up to get their emails, and then I would reply to their emails, like not pushing myself, but just keeping in
just
touch.
like front of mind awareness.
Yeah. And I would follow them on social media. So like with that wine company, they have the most beautiful wine bottles. And so I would comment on their photos saying, wow, that design's off the wall. Like, are these available to print? I'd put it up in my bedroom, like seriously. So, you know, just keeping in touch, staying front of mind and not being pushy, right? Because you can. The other thing I would say is I would set a timeline for when I'm going to follow up with them so that expectations have been set. So for instance, with that wine one, I think they said that we're doing a rebrand, but we might be ready in 6 months. And then I said, well, if that's okay with you, I'll get back in touch in 3 months to just see how that rebrand is coming on and if you might still be looking for copy in the future. And then I put a note in my diary to come back then. But then in the meantime, that's 3 months, which is quite a long time. So I followed them on social media. I got their emails and was an enthusiastic fan.
And there may be some opportunities there. Maybe you think it's an overstep. I'd be curious what you think. I wonder if there are some opportunities depending on the type of work someone does. Like for me, it might be some like responsive CSS bug. For you, it might be a headline where like you get something and you're like, this was so dope. By the way, I noticed on this page, I bet if you swap your headline to this one, it'll like perform better.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't think that's an overstep? You think people might dig that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that would work really well in a video as well. And there's even like plugins that I haven't done this, but I've seen it. Plugins where you can rewrite the website, where you rub it out and you write it. That would be cool.
Nice.
So yeah, definitely.
All right. So let me think of what the key points are I want to hit with our remaining time. I'm gonna just zone out and read. So while I do that, you can fill the silence. I'm gonna say, Delia, is there anything you want to add that doesn't require a response from me?
Yeah, sure. You zone out. I've got this. So one thing I would say as well is that the email that I read was quite long. And some people ask if it's better to write short emails, if it's better to write long emails. And with that, I would say it depends on a few factors, but you just want to make sure that you connect with your audience and you tap into what their actual needs are and how you can help them, and you back it up with a testimonial. Because if you were to just send a short email that's like, hey, I can help you with X, Y, and Z, and I'm so and so, that's not necessarily enough for them to actually even warrant the reply. So, you know, you can make it shorter, but just try to hit those points, which is basically connection. What's their strain or pain or struggle? How can you transform their lives? How can you make their life easier? Which is always a big one. We all want our life to be easier, especially the more successful we get, right? And you're going to be pitching people that are top of their game, or companies that are top of their game, and a clear call to action. So let that dictate the length more so than, is this too long? And use whitespace. And if needs, add a bullet point, add an emoji, and don't be afraid to talk in your tone of voice. Don't be afraid. Do talk in your tone of voice.
Be afraid not to.
Yeah. Embrace it. Because like I said at the beginning, that's the reason why my best clients are the people I've cold pitched, is because I unashamedly showed up as me in those cold pitches.
So guys, I'm going to go through some of the ones that I think are my key ones, but if anyone wants to add more questions, I've got some of the pre-submitted questions and some that I want to be sure we cover. So one that I really want to know is, what numbers are like air quotes bad? Like I heard this quote once about Walt Disney where he got rejected from like 100 pitches before someone funded Disneyland. And I was like, I would not have gone that long. I would have, on like, you know, pitch 15 or 20, I would have been like, okay, clearly this isn't working. I need to do something different. And that's what I always run into, is how do you decide that the system's not working versus it just needing more time or volume? Like, what are bad metrics? Like, if I send out 20 emails and I haven't even gotten a single response, is it time to change something, or do I go for 50? Like, what should I do?
So I can't say that I've got a hard number in my head of where I would change something, but I think if I sent out 20 responses and I didn't get any responses, then I would definitely start changing my call to action. The other thing is change your subject line. That's something we haven't talked about actually, is the subject line of the email, because obviously the whole point of the subject line is to get the email opened. then what we're writing in it is to lead them to the call to action. So there's a few things that we can change if we feel we're not getting the results we want. So change the subject line, change the call to action, try and switch up the length, cut some, maybe try and build up the length if it's not big enough, change the testimonial. Absolutely can. But I would say a couple of things. One is you only need one to make it work. Like, and I think write that on a sticky note and just let it guide you, because we can get so, and then like what we said before, once you've got that one person, like Joanna, she opened up her entire network to me and I became basically her agency's copywriter. And I can hand on my heart say that that made my business what it is today. And that came from that cold email. So you only need one. And you know, I've been talking to lots of other people who've been cold pitching as well. And they've often got in touch with me and they've said, oh, you know, I finally got some, you know, they always come back to me. They're like, finally got one or two. They were a dream client. They always say, oh, they're a dream client. So focus on your why. Why are you doing this? Is it because you want that dream client? You want to go for someone who's not going to find you if you're not doing it, right? Like Joanna wouldn't have found me if I was just liking her stuff on Instagram. She wasn't going to find me. So let that drive you when the rejections come in or the lack of responses come in, because it will happen, and brace yourself for that. So yeah, mix it up, but just keep going, and remember you just need one to make it work.
So this is putting you on the spot and you can think about it, but like, because I did not talk with Delia in advance about this. I got this idea just now. If someone listening like wanted to pay you, and again, this sounds like I'm setting you up for a nice T-ball CTA, but I'm really not. I just thought of this. Like, I could totally see myself wanting to like do my little planning for my cold outreach and be like, all right, I want Delia to just audit this. Like, what do you reckon you'd charge me to do this? Or do you want to think about it and, you know, you don't have to do it on the spot?
I can
or like, would you even want to do it?
Yeah, I totally would. Actually, and people have asked me to do that before. And so maybe I should create an offer. Normally when people ask you things, it's because there's a need for you to step into it, right? So my response at the moment is that you can book a power hour with me, which is €250. And in that time, you would send me, if you'd already written the pitch in advance, you could send it to me and we could use that time to write it better, how we could strengthen it, ask questions, and you just have an hour of my undivided attention, or we could potentially write it together if you haven't actually already written up.
And by the way, do you have a hard stop in 3 minutes?
No, I'm good. I might just have to close the door so my daughter doesn't come in.
Okay. So if I want to ask you more than 3 minutes of questions,
absolutely,
I'm technically allowed. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
For anyone here who has hard stops and wants to ask your questions and bounce, again, you can just type them and ask. And it looks like, by the way, Kim is saying she loves your website and call to actions, and she really appreciates everything today. And I mirror that. When I was reading your website, it made me maybe even LOL, but certainly do an inner and outer smile. Yeah, her copy's great, Kim. Yeah. Okay, so what's a good subject line here? Like, what's the KPI? Is it meant to just get an open, or is it meant to include a compliment? Like, what's the purpose of a good subject here?
Yeah, so you want to get the open. That's the big one. So my subject line, my style of copy is quite cheeky and quite upfront, as you could tell probably. So my subject line was that copywriter you're looking for, with a winky face. And you know, you want it to be something that will get the open. So good subject lines can be a little bit intriguing, but not spammy, right? You want to get that line between intriguing and feeling like you've got something to open it for. The other thing as well is, I just said that actually.
Okay. I've done one before. I don't have enough data to say it's good. Maybe you can tell me if you think it's good, because I don't have any egoic attachment to it. I've done like compliment plus question as the subject line, because they're like, well, I like getting compliments or something like that, or compliment plus idea. But then idea, maybe they don't want an idea. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And again, like that's a testing thing, right? So you could do 20 like that. And then you could do your next 20 changing your subject line. And that's when it is good if you're emailing all in this with the same niche. It becomes easier to just be churning them out.
So Sam says here, he's heard that the quick question works best as a subject line, but it feels kind of impersonal. And I can tell you, DYF, we do the quick question one in our post-launch sequences where we say like, hey, why didn't you buy? And we get some really, really great responses just with quick question, ... But then when I, Zach, want to send someone an actual email with a quick question, I'm like, well, shit, if I say quick question, ... they're going to think it's an autoresponder. What do I do now? I don't know. Anyway, Delia, like, maybe if you have thoughts on this, say them obviously, and I bet you do. But if you could just like gut rattle off like a handful of subjects you've used or ideas, if it's easy for you to do, that could be cool too.
Yeah, so I would say a quick question does absolutely work. You could also, I like intrigue in a question and in a subject line. So quick question is intriguing because you want to know what the question is. And I think that's why it works so well. You could also just go for something like, saw this on your website, ... Like, let's say you were going to actually be critiquing their website, then you could plant a seed of that. Often my best subject lines come after I've written the email. So write the email and then look to see if there's a nugget that you could kind of tease from your email. I would say to steer away from just saying like, hey, or something like that, because that looks quite unprofessional. So whilst you'll see that in email marketing, I don't think that would work for a cold pitch because it's a little bit too
I got a mastermindy kind of idea just now that, again, I'm going to credit to you, even though it's coming from my lips. If you're doing some initial exploratory research, like you're signing up for someone's email course or you're onboarding as a customer of their app, you're doing something that shows some kind of almost like moving you towards a customer commitment, maybe a subject line that speaks to that. Like I'm just thinking if I got an email from a copywriter that was like, quick note about your charge what you're worth email course, I'd be like, well, I want to make sure there's not a mistake there. Or like quick note on your user onboarding process, or like the app sign up process. That one would be a good one. User onboarding process. Yeah.
Those would be brilliant. Like I think if you can personalize the subject line by dropping in the name of the course, or the thing that you're talking about to show it's not spammy, then that's really good.
And if it kind of like shows that you invested either time or attention or money, like if it was like someone was like, something I noticed in your double your freelancing rate course, I'm just thinking this is a customer support email, so I'm never going to not open that because we need to make sure we process customer support emails. It triggers that versus triggers the spam filter. And that's, I think, probably part of it too.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. I think, personalizing that subject line will really help get the open.
So one question that was submitted is in the thread of like imposter syndrome. So what, and it sounds like, so the question, this is from before the interview. So I think if this person were on the interview, they wouldn't have asked this question based on your Barcelona trash blowing in the breeze story. But nonetheless, the question was like, what were the things that caused you to like have enough confidence to actually do this? Like, what gave you enough confidence to say, I'm going to cold email this person and I believe I can do what I'm saying I'm going to do?
Yeah, really good question. So obviously you've got the backstory. So on the one hand, it was like literally, I don't have any money to put food on the table right now because of COVID destroying my travel business. So that was a huge incentive. But you know what? Even if it wasn't for that, I think I would have had the balls to do it just because I wanted to work with these people. Like I didn't want to have to say yes to the next person that came in that wasn't a great fit. I think cold pitching is one of the only ways that you can actually take your business in the direction you want to take it in and work with the clients that you dream about working with, because they're not going to find you otherwise. And what do you have to lose? So go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I suspect part of this is also that like, you knew you weren't bullshitting. You had taken the best copy training on the market. Like Joe's stuff is really, really good. And so at least for me, when I get imposter syndrome, like there's one thing, which is fear of sales. No one likes rejection. No one likes sales. That's like one bucket of thing. But there's this other thing that's, to me, the imposter syndrome thing is, which is like, it's not that I'm afraid of the rejection. It's that I don't think I can write good copy. And so I don't want to reach out. And in your case, it sounds like you had at least a little bit of fundamental confidence because of the training.
So I think it's a really good point. I'm really glad this came up. I think that whatever it is, like if it's that's leading into your imposter syndrome, what can you do to help with that? Because what I did with that, I didn't just do the copywriting course with Joe, which was phenomenal, like incredible. But even then, I thought I need to start charging good money. I'm pitching these amazing clients. I've got 2 projects on my book. Like, what can I do? So I got a copy chief. I actually, her name is Amy Posner, and she's absolutely phenomenal. And she was my coach for the first 6 months of my career. And I said to her, I got onto a discovery call with her. I didn't even have a huge amount of money for this, but I worked out what I would need to earn to be able to pay for it. I got onto the phone call with her and I said to her, what I want is for you to read every single piece of copy that I write in the next 6 months and for you to give me feedback and make it stronger.
Wow.
And
That's
she said
genius.
yes. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like, gosh, this whole thing for me that led to me being a partner with DYF, it also started with me hiring Laura as a coach to just get some feedback from her about my next steps with business. And what I love about what you're saying is it's like, you don't have to believe that you're a super duper good copywriter. All you have to believe is that you can pay, 100 or 200 bucks an hour and use that time very effectively. And then, everything that anyone pays me, it goes through this filter, and that filter will not let shit through. And that's like,
100.
I love that. That's such a hack.
It's such a hack. And I worked out that I was like, okay, I could go, if I don't attack this like by the balls, I can be working with mediocre-ish clients and charging like, I think, $30 an hour or something. Or I could go higher, try and be getting that, how I started, wanted to get $100 an hour, pay a coach that will cost me X. So it's going to take a cut out of that. It's going to reduce that profit. But in the long run, that's setting me up for success. And she was phenomenal. And she wasn't just phenomenal because she chiefed all my copy, but she built my confidence. She kept saying to me things like, you've got a gift, like you've got this. Yeah. And she wasn't bullshitting me. She was telling me what I needed to hear to grow. And she would highlight things I was doing well. And then she would help build me in the things I needed to be built in. And she was a big part of this.
And a sick idea that you'd have to think through, because it just came to me right now. But a sick idea to take this maybe even a step further is like, a lot of companies will list who their like board of directors are, who their advisors are. And you could even take it a step further where you decide who is this person that if they QA'd every single thing I created, I know it would be good. And you could develop your working relationship with them, and you could literally put their freaking face, which carries a lot of reputation and clout, of course, only with their permission. You would not want to do this behind their back, but you could put their face on your website, and you could put their testimonials on your website. And you could essentially say, it's like if I were wanting to build my own reputation DYF, I say like, Brennan Dunn vouches for Zach, and Brennan says these things about Zach. And here's what people said about Brennan, which kind of transfers to Zach. You could do something like that.
Absolutely.
That could work well.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea.
And if your person knows, so let's say who you're pitching knows this person as well.
Exactly, yeah.
And is like in their world, you can even put it in the pitch. Like, by the way, just so you know, my copy chief is Amy Posner. She's a big name. So you could, she costs a fortune. Or you can have me you basically get her brilliant brains and me at a fraction of the price. Like, you're not necessarily spelling that whole thing out, but you're planting that seed.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool mastermindy idea that came out of this. And so that was something Marius was going to ask here is like, if you were to mentor a newbie on how to go about building the competence and confidence to do that first outreach, it sounds like what you're saying is education and mentorship, and maybe that's it. And then ideally you have some burning need because you're going to starve to death if you don't do it. You can just get those 3 things.
And your why, right? Like, what's your why? Yeah. Like, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Because like, maybe it helped that I came at this a bit older. I had 2 careers behind me. I'd had my first baby. I was 38 or 37. I can't remember when I started copywriting. My why was like, I didn't have the time to be pissing around and
Yeah.
earning pennies, right? Like
Yeah.
my why was like, what do I want to do in 5 years' time? Because if you got a why, like, which is my family and my daughter, so like your why can drive you through the fears and that sort of imposter syndrome that can hold you back.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So I'm going to try to draw this to the close because I don't want to disrespect your time more than I have.
I'm okay for five
okay.
minutes more, and then I go and ride my horse.
Cool. Oh, it's not even horse day though. I thought Friday was horse day.
Oh, I fit it in 3 times a week.
Okay. Horse day is whenever you can fit in time to ride a horse. So Sam asked I have a feeling the answer is no, but do you email from a separate domain due to the risk of spam or just your everyday domain?
So I have the domain deliamonk.com, and I email from Delia at deliamonk.com. And actually, that was something that Joanna said to me, that when she liked that my email address wasn't like at gmail.com. She said it felt like I'd already invested in my business. And that might not be the luxury everyone has, but just to mention that. And the other thing that Joanna said she did really like was when she clicked on my links and went onto my website, that it was a well-presented written website. So to go back to our point before about what do you need to have in place, I think that can be a LinkedIn. I think it can be. But you need to have something in place where you are showing up as a professional. And I think your email address can help with that if it's the same as your domain.
Yeah, I think that's smart. And I think what Sam is asking, so like, for example, with DYF, when we send emails, it doesn't come from hello@wfreelancing.com. It technically comes from hello@email.wfreelancing.com, so that if people complain about spam on email.wfreelancing.com, it does not affect the sending reputation of wfreelancing.com. But I knew this would be kind of more technical than you were thinking about. But
yeah, not so technical, sorry.
Yeah, but I do think, Sam, like the thing to take away here is that if she had sent from some bullshit throwaway address, that would have undercut credibility. And seeing that it came from an @deliamonk.com, like that's the KPI. And the question to ask yourself, which we don't have data on, is would seeing @email.deliamonk.com undermine that? I don't know. That's for you to decide. Imagine you received it. How would you feel? And report back when you find out. Run some tests. But I would think with this style of cold outreach that Delia's like vouching for or whatever, like, I don't think you're going to get spam complaints because it's just an email, it's just a regular email in low volume too. So I've got about 1 million more things to ask you about, but we'll table them for another time. So to wrap this up, is there anything you wish I'd asked you that I didn't, or anything else you want to add, or any parting words or anything like that?
No, I think we've covered so much. I hope it's been really helpful. And
It's been amazing.
I would just say, like, my parting word is like, have fun with it. Like, embrace who you are, contact people that you know would set you alive to work with you, and see it as a fun challenge that might take you to where you want to be. And try to embrace that mentality if people don't come back to you.
It's almost like seeing your emails as an art form in and of themselves is what I'm picking up.
Yeah, definitely.
And if someone wants to like follow you or learn more about you or hire you to audit their cold outreach or whatever thing, like where should I go to be in your sphere of awesomeness? So
you can head to my website, deliamonk.com. And if you sign up to receive my emails on Thursdays, I will send you my Thursday toilet talk, which is what I like to say, the only emails that are worth taking to the toilet with you and will help you grow your business on the toilet. So
except the DYF emails also.
Yeah, and you take them to the toilet too, right? I wasn't sure how you felt about that, Zach.
No,
right?
definitely.
Yeah. Okay,
I want my emails to be read while pooping.
Perfect.
Continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your pitch. I just had to.
Oh, I love it. Well, now someone else, so I could be like, yeah, you can take them on the loo too. So yeah, do take me to the toilet with you on Thursdays. And apart from that, you can catch me on Instagram at delia.monk. There's a theme. It's just Delia Monk everywhere.
And you said that there was like some email thingy for writing better copy for my website, right?
Yeah, so I've put together a 3-step plan to write your website. It takes you through my entire process, everything from research how you can find your sunshine factor, what makes you different to everybody else, to actually how to tips for writing copy and how to add more personality into your copy as well. And that's available at deliamonk.com/plan.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. It's been awesome talking to you. For those of you listening, I'm going to definitely try to get Delia into the community more, get her to make some courses and whatnot. Her deep dive will be in the community soon. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for the time. Talk soon.
Thanks for having me.